So in the last video, we talked about economics in general. Well, defining economics. Economics is the study of choice. Now let's talk about how chapter one is structured, or what it basically chapter one revolves around answering three questions. Think of these three questions are questions for survival. What are the three questions? Well, one is, what do we produce with our limited resources? Think about if you were on a desert island by yourself. You would say, oh, okay, what do I do in order to survive? Well, first, you would have to take an account of what you have as a means for survival. Do you have any food available? Do you have any water? Do you have any materials for shelter? That's what to produce with your limited resources. The second is, well, how do I produce those goods and services I need to survive? Sure, you need shelter. Sure, you have wood to build shelter, but how do you actually do that? There may be animals on that island that you could catch and eat, but how do you catch them? Once you catch them, how do you cook them? So do you see how you produce those things you need to survive is incredibly important to answer? Then finally, who gets the output from your actions? Now, if you're on this island by yourself, the for whom part is very simple. But what if you have an island mate or somebody else that you share the island with? This could be a very difficult question to answer, because there is no correct way of answering it. The for whom part depends upon what you consider to be your fair share of the efforts put forth to produce these things. Now, for example, you may think that you came up with the idea of how to trap the animal. Well, then, therefore, you feel that you should get most of the meat from cooking that animal. Other people say, well, I actually caught the animal with your idea. I should get most of the meat from that animal. Can you see how there's really no way of clearly deciding who gets what, because it's based upon what you deem to be of your fair share? This could be a very contentious issue, and we see this in society now in terms of inequality. To what degree is inequality unfair? Well, it depends upon what you think is your fair share, your right to a nation's output. So these three things, what, how, and for whom, we use economics to answer these questions. Now, if we're going to talk about economics, we've got to define what the economy is. And the economy is really an abstraction. Think of the economy like you would think of a party, right? I'm drawing a balloon here. That's a horn. These are party favors right here. A little hat, right? People always draw hats for parties, right? So this is a party. Now, if I asked you, can you define a party for me? Well, you say, well, it's a bunch of people getting together and having fun. Well, can you measure party activity? That could be difficult, right? Well, think about an economy. An economy is a bunch of people getting together to get things done. And we try to measure economic activity, and measuring economic activity is very similar to trying to measure party activity. In each case, what we're trying to measure is an abstraction. A party is an abstraction. An economy is an abstraction. But we treat economies like they are living beings, right? Sometimes we say the economy is sick, it's overheating, it's sluggish. Can you see how we're trying to apply concepts that we usually apply to living beings? And so I want you to understand the economy is simply our interaction. And that's what we're trying to measure when we try to measure the economy. How can we measure the level of activity we have in any nation? So the economy basically is us. It's the aggregation or the accumulation of all of our supply and demand decisions, or in other words, of all of our activity. Now, if we're going to get things done, we have to define our factors of production. Now, think about factors of production. That's another way of looking at scarcity. Scarcity is going to be related to factors of production. We never have enough of the things we need to produce the goods and services that we desire. So therefore, we have to make choices. Remember, economics, study of choice. Now, think about factors of production are the things we need to produce goods and services. Well, what are some of the factors of production? Well, we need land to produce goods and services. Now, land does not just reflect or refer to the area upon which the factory is built. It's also the water in the ground, the natural resources, the air that we breathe. This is all part of land. We need land to produce goods and services. We also need labor. Now, labor is not just the physical work producing things, it's also your skills. So in other words, when you take a college class, you're enhancing your skills, which makes your labor more valuable. You need labor to produce goods and services. What about capital? When I say capital, most people think about money or investments. That is a particular type of capital, but we call that financial capital. This is a different type of capital. This is what we call physical capital. And physical capital are basically goods used to produce other goods. So think about a tractor, right? That's a tractor. That's a good used to produce other goods. Think about a pizza oven into a pizza parlor. That's a good used to produce other goods. So think of this as plant and equipment. You need that. Now, the final factor of production that the book mentions is entrepreneurship. Now, this is a little difficult to define. One of the reasons is this is not a physical factor of production. Land, capital, and labor are physical factors of production. They're tangible. Entrepreneurship, these are ideas that we're using to produce something. An idea. So let me just draw an idea here. So think of this as for some reason I've lost the use of my pen, but I was trying to draw a light bulb for an idea. And the way the book defines entrepreneurship is it's the assembling of resources to produce new or improved ideas. How do I assemble land, capital, and labor in a way that can enhance their ability to produce goods and services? So land, capital, entrepreneurship, and labor are the 4 factors of production. If you eliminate any one of them, you can't produce anything. So you need to produce goods and services with a combination of all 4. And so this is something that every economy, every society has some level of scarcity related to one or if not all factors of production. Therefore, we've got to make choices in terms of what we produce. And again, that leads us to the next slide, is there is limits to what we can produce because there's always limited factors of production. And this leads us to one of the first concepts that we're going to be covering are the production possibilities. And what we're going to be doing in the next video is we're going to be looking at graphs that will demonstrate a number of economic principles. One, we're going to be looking at a graph that demonstrates scarcity. We're going to be looking at a graph that demonstrates choices. And we're going to be looking at a graph that demonstrates the compatibility of factors of production to substitute for one another. And that's we're going to call that the production possibilities curve. And that's what we're going to be covering in our next video.